Welcome to the monthly conversation with Konstantin, which I certainly look forward to, and I know many of you have come to look forward to that as well. He is one of the most respected voices on YouTube about what is happening inside Russia. Konstantin Samoilov is a well-known YouTuber whose channel Inside Russia comments insightfully on Russia's descent into authoritarianism over the last few years. Like many others, he's now outside of Russia, and of course, with no idea when he will be able to return there. Welcome to Silicon Curtain. Please like and subscribe and do comment on the videos, as it does help them perform in YouTube based on changes to the algorithm. And of course, it will help you not miss any future episodes. Please also have a look at the links to Ukrainian charities that we've got in the description of this video. And if you like the work we do, then buy Konstantin a coffee and maybe consider buying me one as well. Konstantin, welcome.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. Thank you for having me. Fantastic to be here again and talking to you. I look forward to our meetings as well. And great to see everyone.
It's great, isn't it? Every time I worry that we won't have enough to talk about, but we have not been disappointed yet. In fact, we often run out of time before we've covered all the topics. Before we get into the extraordinary things unfolding in Russia, and they always are extraordinary, we need to mention what has happened in the last 24 hours. There has been the largest missile attack on Ukraine since the start of the full-scale war. It's reported at the moment that there are 110 missiles were deployed of every different type, except I think Kinzhals, but every other type is represented. And at the moment, the reported figures are 30 dead. So this is one of the highest impact attacks, and it's across numerous cities, including ones that are very rarely hit, like Lviv, and that has taken a pounding as well. Let's discuss the causes of it, but let's also really recall just the absolute horror of what's happening here.
Jonathan, it's absolutely horrible. I don't know what there is to discuss. The cause is obvious. I mean, it's a no-brainer. The Ukrainians did a successful strike onto a Russian modern ship called Novorossiysk, and from what it appears to be, they destroyed it. And there are videos all over internet with huge explosion, a mushroom growing out of the ship, and this is a revenge strike. It's just horrible. I mean, I don't know what to say.
It's pure vengefulness, isn't it? And the order would have definitely come from Putin. This is his style. He has. I recently spoke to this was a very weird interview that I did. I spoke to someone who was a senior colonel, I think, in the would it be the third directorate of the KGB? It's very, very odd conversation, and I asked him, why does Putin behave like this? What is his mindset? And his answer, I think, perfectly describes the attack that we've seen. He just says, well, he's an inadequate man, and he's also short and skinny. So, of course, he hates everybody. And Ukraine strikes military targets. Russia strikes back purely at civilians. And, can we have any doubt that Putin gave the orders for this?
Jonathan, I don't know who gave the orders. Perhaps him. I know it's just I am Russian, and I'm looking at this, and I'm feeling pain, and I'm feeling guilt, and I'm not. This is terrible. All I can say is please forgive us. I don't know what else can I say.
Yeah, I think we're all
horrific.
We're all feeling the same here about this. It is terrible, and but we're also seeing, I think, an extraordinary increase in the pressure within Russia as well, as their war effort exacts more of a toll on the economy, as it becomes harder and harder for them to achieve really any kind of success. And, they're making a big deal out of taking what essentially is a small pile of ruins. It's essentially a village, not a town or a city, which is Mariinka. They're finding it harder and harder, I think, to maintain this war. Do you see internal cohesion within the Russian so-called elite sort of starting to fall apart and then turn on themselves?
It's really hard to tell what's going on inside the elites, but what I am clearly seeing is signs. There are signs that something's going on. Like Winston Churchill said that Russian politics is just like a fight of bulldogs under carpet. That's pretty much what we can see, what's happening. And there are a lot of rumors, but it's really hard to confirm them. But what I'm seeing, and to me, that's a clear sign that there is fighting going on. This, pulling and pushing, and it shows me that there is a struggle between power groups inside the Russian government, Russian elites, however you want to call them. So yes, something is going on. There's also pressure on the lower level, not among the elites, but among the Russians. And for the first time since February 24th, 2022, we're seeing Russians start openly protesting. And this protests come from women, from mothers and mothers and wives whose husbands and sons are serving in the front lines. And um, I don't think they're going to stop. I think they're going to be protesting more and more. And some of these people, some of the women, they are absolutely fearless now. Just in the recent days, I've seen videos of women whose husbands died, they were killed, and they have nothing to lose. And they start speaking up and they start, blaming the government, Putin, and everyone. They start, saying things the way they are, okay? And this is just the beginning in my mind.
And of course, we know that the regime believes there's a threat here because it has been reported that they have assigned, quite a lot of FSB resource to tracking, following, and potentially intimidating these groups of women. In some ways, it reminds us a little bit, doesn't it, of the Kursk. I don't know if you remember the scenes of the videos where there were women at a kind of open hall event, really screaming at Putin, and then some FSB officers in the audience just came up and injected them and then carried them away. This is almost throwing us back to protests, which Putin found very uncomfortable. It was that point onwards where he withdrew from these kind of public appearances, public debates. And he's almost remained in that bunker for 20 years. I hope this is now going to catch up with him, and there's going to be some reckoning.
I remember the days of Kursk. I watched, there was much more freedom. Basically, Russia was a free country back then. And Russian governments and Putin's take, the power grab started with Kursk actually. So I remember the footage. I remember women screaming. Yes, situation was very different in terms of, Kursk was just one vessel, and right now there's a huge army, hundreds of thousands of men serving. But the core idea is the same. Yes, I agree.
And there's another really quite sort of curious phenomenon that I don't know if this has been going on for a couple of weeks or not, but I've only really just become aware of it in the last week. And this is Ekaterina Duntsova, who has appeared as if from nowhere and become a kind of lightning rod for discontent. Now, she's been barred from standing in the presidential election, which is not unexpected, perhaps, but it has also prompted, I think, a huge amount of debate. Is she an organic candidate? Is she someone who's a completely free agent? We haven't seen anybody really in the last 10 years appear as a sort of free agent protester. Or is she somehow being put up there as either a regime candidate to try and test the water and see, what opinion is? Or is it another faction perhaps has put her forward? It's generated quite a lot of debate and speculation, hasn't it?
It certainly has. Um, Jonathan, I consider myself an expert on everything Russia these days, on the politics, on the economy, um, you know, uh, the wartime Russia, so to speak. And even for me, the name Ekaterina Duntsova was absolutely unknown until early November. I didn't know who she was. She was like Black Horse, I think in English that's a word. Absolutely unknown to us. And she put up a stand. She stood up and, she very firmly decided to run and to give Vladimir Putin a fight. And she did. And she did very much so, despite the fact that she was shut down by the Central Election Committee. The whole thing was farce. Okay. But I think she did a very important step into the right direction for many, many people. Uh, I believe she's an independent candidate, and there were questions. In even I questioned because usually someone who is self-nominates and runs against Vladimir Putin. Usually that's not very independent candidate. I mean, look who's running now. 20 people, and we all know them by names. We all know who they are. She was not known, and some people questioned, saying that she was one of them, one of the puppets. If she was, they would let her run. They would let her take some of the votes of the liberals, and she would be a part of the system. But they crushed her, and that makes me believe she's for real.
That also means
She
she's in real danger. I mean, to stand up like that.
Yes, now she is. Now she is. She's in danger because she's for real, because she's not part of the system, because she's the only independent, self-nominated, contender. I don't know if you looked and watched the video how they were trying to shut her down while she was collecting 500 signatures with the representative of Central Election Committee, and they were cutting up power supply to the building when that event was taking place. Did you see that?
I missed that one, but it sounds exactly like the kind of thing they would do
Yeah,
if
the
she
people
was a
took out their
genuine. Yeah.
flashlights, their smartphones with flashlights, and started, continuing with the flashlights in their hands. And someone brought a mobile generator, portable generator, and then they got a little bit of electricity, and they did manage to get 500 signatures. So, but then they crushed her in the most direct, unmasked way, if you know what I mean. And she has applied to the Supreme Court, and that she was shut down recently, just a couple of days ago, for the second time. Supreme Court ruled out that she uh, upheld the decision by the Central Election Committee. Surprise, surprise. But now Ekaterina Dontsova is going further. She announced that she's going to create a party, a political party. And this puts her into danger, okay? Because she's an independent candidate. Any independent candidate not part of the system poses a threat to the system. Imagine this. Russians are so fed up, and when they see that someone, just one person, decent enough, honest enough, even if they disagree with this person's political program, they start voting en masse for that person, okay? So that's a threat to the system, and I think she's in danger now, yes.
And you've got a sort of Belarusian kind of scenario there, which is
Tikhanovskaya, yes.
Tikhanovska, where everybody knows then categorically that the vote is falsified. And even though he's certainly not a real oppositional candidate, the minute Igor Strelko-Girkin announced that he was going to take part in politics and didn't have permission to do so, bang, next day he is arrested. So what upsets
Did
me, Constantia? I'll let you
did you know
respond
that
to that.
Did you know that he was trying to become a participant of the presidential race as well?
Yes, that's right. He announced it from prison, which doesn't seem like a very clever move.
Well, it was clever for him. I would say that it was the only. I think that's the only way that he can save his life, because his life also is in danger. So he wanted to come up, put up a fight and then use it to negotiate, saying, "Oh, I'll withdraw if you let me out of prison or whatever." Make some kind of a deal. But they didn't let him just to enter stage one. I'm not sure if you're aware how he was shut down. He had four attorneys arranged to come and witness the signature process of 500 people, and all four attorneys were intercepted by KGB, and they were warned, and none showed up. And I think one tried to show up, and they started investigating his license the very next day. So that's a move of direct threat and a lesson to everyone. Okay, so that's I personally think Igor Strelkov is a dead man walking.
Very much so. We'll come to Prigozhin, who has gone on to the other side after taking similar risks. What really upsets me, though, Konstantin, is when I see in the Western media that they report on, um, Zhuganov said this, Grigory Yavlinsky said that, and they report on these characters as if they're politicians, as if they had any kind of agency or freedom of opinion. Whereas I think you and I accept that they are absolutely puppets in a puppet show, reading from a script. And the minute they diverge from that script, the same as the propagandists, actually, they are done.
They are actors in a theater, in a play. And you are absolutely right. It makes two of us. I am very upset about that as well, because you're right. Everyone from Russian government are taken seriously. All Russian economists who work for the government release numbers that are cooked in, honorable organizations in the West take those cooked numbers and make forecasts, real serious forecasts based on those numbers. Okay, and they don't understand what really is going on in Russia.
And as a result, they adopt the wrong policies, the wrong attitude towards Russia, especially vis-a-vis Ukraine, and of course, arming it to defend itself. Another constituency, which is often reported as if it is a genuine organic phenomenon, is these ZPatriots and bloggers. Now, they may have quite a bit more leeway to say certain things, but again, they're all working from a kind of editorial structure. And if they step outside of the roles that are assigned to them, then they're in trouble. We saw that with the blogger who was blown up in St. Petersburg, assuming it wasn't Ukraine that did that. It's just as likely that was the FSB just telling everyone not to overstep their roles. But one of the narratives that we're seeing in the last couple of months in the sort of Z blogger, Z patriot kind of information sphere is an escalation of threats towards Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, and other countries that are trying to assert their independence, that are trying to edge away from, I would say, the Ruski Mir and the sort of, the controlling hand of Moscow. Now, this obviously directly affects you here, and I'm sure you're paying a special attention to this because of where you're based. What's your interpretation of these kind of narratives appearing, threats to countries that are former, colonies, essentially, of the Russian Empire?
Jonathan, what they are doing doesn't make any sense. It the you know these things that come out of the mouths of Z Patriots, they are so harmful to both Russia and the Russians who live inside Russia and here in Uzbekistan or in any other countries, Kazakhstan and other countries affected. This is absolutely insane. I mean, this guy, who is a Russian official, he's not just ZPatriot. He is a member of Ministry of Defense. He is on one of the public committees overseeing the Ministry of Defense. So he's a official, and then he says an atrocious thing that he is to start a law in the Russian parliament that would make all those decisions that disband the USSR illegal. Therefore, Russia can take the former republics of the USSR back that are now the sovereign countries, and he names Uzbekistan. And Uzbekistan is probably the most loyal country to Russia and the Russians. I've spent a lot of time here, and this is an incredible country and incredible people, very hospitable, very good attitude towards Russians. And the next thing I know, I walk into a cafe. We have breakfast at our community of the refugees, and the waiters that know me by name, they serve me food for the past year. They jump on me and they started asking me questions. What do you think of this? Is that guy for real? What have we done to you so you want to conquer us again? And they're very upset. Regular people on the ground, okay? And I have nothing to say to them. Say, I'm sorry, we have different opinion, and we believe that you're sovereign, and Russia has no business poking its nose into Uzbekistan. But that's my opinion, and that guy is the official in Russia, and he is heard by many people. And then, as you saw the video, he was being applauded when he was saying that. Well, everyone in Uzbekistan, the first they couldn't believe it, and then they started taking steps. The Uzbek president, just to understand what kind of reaction follows when ZPatriots says something like that. Uzbek president conducted a meeting, held a meeting where he criticized the policy. He criticized Uzbek television for allowing Russian television to dominate in Uzbekistan, and that's going to change. He said that the role of Uzbek language must be increased. Okay, the local television and local language must be strengthened. And movies and TV series must be produced by the locals in Uzbek language, not in Russian language. Okay, and the guy means business. He walks the walk. He made a decision to create a special tax-free zone called Uzbek Cinema Park, and they're inviting the Western companies to become residents, tax-free, English law. Okay, not Uzbek law, but English law in that free zone. And they want to develop their own television. And it literally happened 2 days after this guy said that he was started to he wanted to start these procedures that would allow Russia to annex Uzbekistan. Okay, and then very many Uzbeks, they became more hostile towards Russian because the guy says, well, who can not allow us to do that after we go, we conquer Ukraine and have military parade in Kiev. Next, we move to Uzbekistan and no one can stop us. Who will stop us? Well, the next thing I expect that Uzbekistan will knock on the Chinese door or an American door, NATO door, and said, hey, please protect us from Russia. Okay, and this is crazy. I don't understand why the people in Russia do that, but they do so much harm. both to the countries and to regular people. And also people in Kazakhstan also got very upset and very, very anxious, because if you look at the map, that Russians cannot invade Uzbekistan because there's no direct border between Uzbekistan and Russia. There's Kazakhstan in the middle.
And
And if they
Kazakhstan's
show up
quite big, right? It's
yes, but
quite substantial.
yes, well, they would have to take Kazakhstan first. Who knows what the plans are?
Yeah, I once took a one of those sort of was it 3 days, 3 nights train from Moscow down to Tashkent, and there's an awful lot of desert in the way. I mean, I don't give the sort of tanks and stuff too much chances to actually make it across all of that territory and still be in fighting order. I mean, it's a crazy, crazy idea. Maybe the point was to actually make it less comfortable for what they see as opponents of the regime and opponents of the war. Perhaps that maybe is the point. Maybe there is no point. But all this poisonous language is coming back, isn't it, to haunt the propagandists. And there's this incredible story this week of one of the propagandists who I find one of the most vile, one of the most objectionable. It's not Mardan, he's second most objectionable in my view, but there's plenty of them. And this is Anton Kuznetsov-Krasovsky. And apparently he and a friend were poisoned. The friend is reported to have died, but Krasovsky is in a critical condition. What do you make of that?
I was taught a very wise saying by my mentor a long time ago, and I live by it. Uh, what goes around comes around, and it works every single time. It never fails. And this is what happened to Anton Krasovsky. No more, no less. The system that he helped created, helped creating, he helped created, he helped to create, I'm sorry, bit him back.
And we can only hope that the same karma reaches the rest of them. Well, let's talk about every time we do one of these, we address the state of the economy. And we've talked before about oil, but Russia has formally admitted that actually most of its oil supplies have shifted from being supplied to predominantly the West prior to the full-scale invasion. Now it's China and India that are receiving the bulk of Russia's oil supplies. And even though the volume output is as high, if not higher, at the start of the full-scale war, there are some challenges, aren't there, in actually turning the revenues from the oil into, money that the Russian state can actually spend on munitions or whatever. Certainly with India and China, those currencies are not interchangeable on the international markets. And Russia's got a real problem, hasn't it? Spending that revenue, using that revenue to power its war machine.
There are problems, multiple problems with Russian oil exports right now. And you mentioned two of them. There's a very big problem with India and a smaller problem with China. India, all oil that is supplied to India is paid for in Indian rupees that are stored in India, and that they cannot be transferred to anywhere else. They cannot be exchanged for dollars. They basically can only be spent in India. Okay. And the Indians have a lot of power to say how those rupees will be spent. For example, the latest development, the Indians have come up with a list of large infrastructure projects to be completed inside India. And Russians can invest those money that are spent in accounts, in rupees received for oil supplies. They can invest into the large, long-term, very long-term Indian infrastructure projects, and possibly in many years from now receive some return. Okay, to me that's kind of crazy. Okay, Russian Parliament's upper chamber, Valentina Matvienko, proposed another very extravagant, thing. She proposed to send single mothers that are struggling raising their children, trying to make ends meet, to send them for vacations to India and pay by the money that are stored in India. That just shows you that Russia has a real problem. It's basically supplying most of oil to India for free. It cannot use money that is paid. And China is the same problem, only it's a smaller problem. There's a large trade between international trade between India and Russia, and the Russians can actually pay for products that come from India, from China. So, but still, Chinese don't like when Chinese yuans are, transferred or spent outside of China. So, and there are other problems with oil exports too. And although, Russia did fairly well in the last months because of those skyrocketed oil prices, it managed to make good money. That's one of the reasons why Russian economy hasn't completely crashed yet.
And of course, Putin visited the Middle East. It was one of the first foreign trips he'd made, because he could be assured that he wouldn't be arrested in, I think it was Dubai he visited. I may have got that wrong. Or UAE, wasn't it? He visited. And he was treated as a serving head of state. He was given the full kind of red carpet treatment, which would have stoked his ego. But there must have been a strategic reason behind that Middle East visit. And I'm sure, as you mentioned, trying to keep high oil prices, limiting sort of production and output of oil onto the market was a key part of what he wants to do. But it's not all success, is it? Because another story has come in, and that is that the Arctic LNG project, which is sort of critical to Russia being able to turn its gas output into a transportable product. If foreign investors have apparently withdrawn from that project, and it is currently shelved. So there are a number of real longer term challenges, aren't they? Not least the sophisticated equipment required, both the LNG project, but also to maintain the existing infrastructure behind, oil wells, and the specialist equipment required to sort of maintain and extract oil.
Absolutely. I agree. I also think that Putin went to the Middle Eastern countries. First, it was Abu Dhabi. He visited for a couple hours, and then he flew to Saudi Arabia right after Abu Dhabi for another hour. He briefly met with the heads of states, those states, and I think the discussion was about oil. I agree with that. Not much was talked about in Russian propaganda. It means that Putin did not achieve any results. Otherwise, that'd be hailing that as victory, huge victory of Russian diplomacy in Vladimir Putin. And you are so right about those ports that put gas into the liquefied gas as a big problem and long-term problems. Russia has lost its best, greatest paying customer, Europe, the European countries. It's lost oil export to Europe completely. There's a ban to European countries, and it's lost natural gas. And if you look at the map, it's the best location for logistics. Russia right next to Europe. You can use all kinds of transports to get oil and gas there. And Russia had pipelines in place that were constructed back in the USSR and the Nord Streams. So it was a perfect paying customer, and it's lost. Europe did not, well, it suffered economically last year, but it did not freeze to death as the Russians were hoping it would. Instead, it diversified the supplies of oil and the natural gas, and it's receiving needed resources from other countries. Yes, and there are also market forces that are pressuring Russia in the Middle Eastern countries, and one of them is the rise of oil extraction, in the United States. That's jumped up a lot, and it's keeping the oil prices low. So all in all, Russia is in trouble. It's lost its biggest bread makers, and although hasn't lost completely, but it's losing more and more.
And there are other troubles on the horizon. We have to mention this topic. We were chatting about it before we hit record, and that is eggs. There's a little bit of a problem with eggs as well, isn't there? And I I kind of feel slightly bad about laughing because I remember the misery of having to sort of, try and find these products at the shops and get them home, as we were talking about. But there's two things: seeing the queues of people in Voronezh, amongst other cities, queuing for eggs. But there was this extraordinary film yesterday of an FSB SWAT team arresting a man really brutally, pinning him to the ground. I think, he was punched in the stomach, essentially for buying 120 eggs illegally at a market and thereby depriving the Russian treasury of €2 in tax revenue. I mean, it's it's both farcical, but it's also quite an extraordinary indicator of where Russia's ended up.
It's a sign of bigger problems to come. There's no question about that in my mind. You know, I made predictions for the economy for 2023, and I expected Russian economy to fall into bigger problems quicker. I thought it would be performing much worse by the end of the year than it's performing right now. But I have revisited, my notes, my analysis, and now I am doubling my stakes. And I mean, I think that the situation in 2024 will be worse than I ever thought it would be. Okay. Eggs is just a sign, an early bird of this troubles to come. Um, it's just to show you that Russian state is sugarcoating a lot of problems, fundamental problems that are existing in the economy right now. And it starts using, like, we used to call it command economy or planned economy, okay? Methods that were used in the USSR, okay? It starts limiting stores in how many eggs it can sell, they can sell. It starts dictating price ceilings to um, producers of eggs. It starts threatening producers. It starts investigating, sends criminal investigators to companies that sell and produce and sell eggs. And then what you said, you saw a video of a guy getting arrested yesterday. I mean, this is crazy. Okay, the state interferes more and more into the economy, and it's either a free market economy or it's not. There's no middle. Okay, and we're clearly seeing that it's not anymore. Russian state is very ineffective at planning things economically, and basically, right now, the remaining of the savings account, so-called state welfare fund, is used to sugarcoat, to kind of put out the flames. For example, they're buying a lot of eggs right now from Azerbaijan, from Iran, from Turkey, to kind of flood the market with the eggs. Okay, and I I suspect they're using state money to subsidize, because in Turkey, eggs cost much more than in Russia. Okay. Turkish eggs are just not competitive in Russia. And this shows you, I mean, it's funny, right? Egg shortages, but it shows you that the fundamental problems with the economy. And oh boy, we're going to be seeing, oh, a lot of unpleasant stuff happening in Russia economically very soon. I think it's going to start en masse right after the elections, March, April of 2024.
And then if the same thing happens with meat, if the same thing happens with bread, then it's over. That's
Jonathan, it'll happen to everything. You got to understand, it will happen to everything. Okay. I've seen that happen before. 1992, when one system collapsed and another system was not there yet. Okay. What happened was complete chaos. The prices were doubling every couple weeks. I remember my parents would bring salaries, and the first thing we would do, we would run to stores to buy food, because tomorrow, then the following day, it would cost more. Okay. And it's called stagflation, when economy is not growing, but the prices are growing. And that's not a very good situation. And I think stagflation is going to be huge in Russia.
Absolutely. In 1998, you had the same kind of scenario where the warehouses refused to release goods because prices were changing so fast they couldn't keep up. If they'd sold the goods at a certain price, they couldn't then replenish their stock to make a profit. We're looking at similar kind of crisis. And this is where it's kind of crazy, because the stories people would tell me in the 90s are starting to come back, and the scenarios that we saw then are coming back. And one of the persistent stories that I heard from many different people in St. Petersburg was about the siege of Leningrad. And of course, you have the horror stories of cannibalism, the horror stories of people dying in the streets, and the siege of Leningrad was grim, unimaginably grim. And many hundreds of thousands of Russians fought with incredible fortitude against the Nazis, when they finally fought against the Nazis, after 1942. But there were other stories which everybody told me, and that was that if you were to go near any kind of communist party building, or the central committee of the Communist Party, there would be bins outside there with luxury food, half eaten, wasted, thrown away. So these incredible stories about how everybody is living so badly except the elite, who are indulging themselves in the most sort of grotesque, decadent manner. We see a little bit of an echo of that this week in the so-called sort of almost naked party that has been conducted by celebrities. Doesn't have that same kind of last days of the Roman Empire, decadent kind of feel about it.
Well, it did. It did. There are a couple of things I would talk about. First, I personally wouldn't attend a party like that. I don't find it attractive. I don't find it decent. Okay. The way that they're handling the party right now, the aftermath of the party is, I'm looking at it at awe. Okay. They are canceling everyone who attended not everyone, but some people, some powerful people, politicians got off easy, got off as if they did not attend the party. Okay. The public figures, the public people whose faces um, were photographed, videotaped, and those photos spread everywhere. They're being canceled right now, and um, the organizer of the party, Nastya Ivleeva, she is being criminally investigated. She's facing 5 years in prison, and that's serious. It's not jokes anymore. She's being charged with spread or propaganda of extremism. This law was just signed by Vladimir Putin a couple of weeks ago that completely forbade LGBT plus and made it extremism, and even mentioning is now a crime in Russia. If someone performs coming out, that's a crime. Okay. And these people who were at the party, most of them support the war. Most of them work for the Russian government. Most of them make money from the concerts that are allowed to be performed in Russia. Some of them even visited Donetsk, Lugansk, the new territories, the annexed territories. And now the propaganda, the state is getting back at them. That's one more time. What goes around comes around. Okay. Perfect example. And that happened very, very quick. Now, another thing is the reaction is very strange. It was a private party by invitation only. It was not televised. There were a few people got together and then they did whatever they wanted to do.
There
Okay.
was press invited, though, which I find rather odd. There were reporters actually invited into the party as well. So maybe they didn't think what they were doing was in
You
any
know who
way
organized the
wrong.
party?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know who
It's
organized the party?
Ivlieva herself,
No,
isn't it? No.
no. MTS. That's a company that sponsored Ivlieva. That was the organizer. And then after this stinky substance hit the fan, they kind of isolated, that ejected themselves from the picture, like they had nothing to do with it. There were pictures of a vice president half naked at that party of this company MTS, the mobile services uh, provider, and now they're erasing all his pictures. Okay, they were the first ones who canceled Ivlieva, so that's not so straightforward. Okay, they according to Vladimir Putin, everything is going well in Russia. Economy is doing fantastic. Russia has withstood all the sanctions pressure. Russian economy is growing. Russian army is victorious. It's doing whatever it's doing. I mean, I'm not sure how victorious because it's not moving anywhere except for backwards, but it's victorious. That's the official party line. Why do you care if people do whatever they want to do? If everything is great, then fine. Then the freedoms should prevail in Russia, right? Then people, that's what people are fighting for. For citizens, they can do anything they want to. Instead, these guys are being canceled. It's not like I like them personally, I don't. But what I'm seeing is also early birds of chaos that is descending. This is like a command to everyone, you know, go and fight the enemies of the state, and the enemies can be anyone now. And it's for the FSB, it's for the police, and it's for regular people who are going to be writing denunciation letters now. So that's what I think. This is
Yeah.
the whole thing is crazy.
And in case
That's
anyone gets the wrong interpretation of this, I don't believe these people are being punished because of any kind of morality. Now, that might be the superficial reason used, but we know that most of the senior leadership who have their own palaces, Putin included, one of the sort of things we learned about, the palace at Gelendzhiki is that there was a pole dancing room and all sorts of, potentially sordid spaces in there. So we know that actually they don't give a damn about morality. This isn't what's going on here, is it? This is a move to remind everybody that if they have status, if they have money, power, prestige of any sort, they don't own it. It's leased by the state. And they need to remember that the state can take that away at any time. And I think, is this what's going on here? It's to remind everybody that essentially they are part of the systema. And if they step outside of it, or if they deviate from their script that's been given to them, nobody is immune. Nobody has power as an independent agent.
Take it even further. even if they don't step outside the script, even if they stay within the, the borders, so to speak, even then they're not safe. Even then they can be punished at any time to be made an example to the others. Okay. This is what I think partially is happening here.
Yes, I mean it's those bulldogs again under the rug, biting
I
biting each
remind you,
other.
none of those people said anything negative about the war in Ukraine. They all support. They all propaganda voices. They all work for the government. They all paid by the government. Okay, they didn't do anything to upset anyone except they threw a party that became public knowledge.
And again, it's not like celebrities of the West. I mean, we have a whole range of talentless celebrities, right? We have, and this is some people have been trying to compare it to, the the sort of lower tier celebrities you can get here as well. But I think there's a fundamental difference here. You can be talentless here, but you can disagree with the government at the same time, and no one will really cancel you. What I find interesting about this whole host of Russian celebrities, and many of them will appear in these, fairly tacky end of year, New Year shows and so on. And as you say, a lot of them will appear in Donetsk and so on. First of all, they owe their privilege and status to their loyalty, their willingness to be loyal to the regime. That is the number one criteria. You don't meet that, you don't appear anywhere or get concerts anywhere. The second criteria is nepotism. Most of them will have got their positions not through working their way up through some system of meritocratic talent and so on. Many of them will have got their positions through their SIET, their network, their connections. And some of them might incidentally be talented. I mean, a lot of them aren't. Some of them might incidentally be talented as well. So this again is part of the whole charade, the system, the sort of entire fake panoply of celebrity.
Oh, I agree with you. Yes, Russian world of celebrities is really small, and money there only comes from the government, or the government controls whether you can be a part of that world or not. Okay, and you have to pledge your allegiance to the government, and that's what they did. And you're absolutely right. Many of them do whatever they do through connections, not due to their talent. I agree with you here. In that group of people who were at that half naked party, I don't have one single person who I actually like, who is talented, who I watch and listen. Not single one.
That says a lot about your taste there. I think so excellent taste. Then, well, let's get on to the final segment here, because I know you made a bunch of predictions for 2023. We've already discussed some of them. Some have come to pass, some not. Some are perhaps a little bit delayed in terms of the collapse of the economy. If I can ask you, which of those predictions, were turned out to be some of the most important ones, and then finally, let's get your ideas of what's going to unfold in the next 12 months, because it seems at this point that anything could happen. But what can we say with any degree of certainty?
Let's talk about 2023 first. Well, the biggest, I'll tell you where I was wrong, okay? Because there are a few things I was wrong about. My biggest wrong prediction was about Vladimir Putin be out of the office by the end of the year. I was hoping, I had a gut feeling that he's on the way out. I kept on saying that. Well, it's the end of the year. He's still in the office in the Kremlin. I still have a feeling that he's gonna go soon, one way or another. I don't know how. He could step down by himself. There's a possibility, also very slight, but there's a possibility to give the throne to the successor. Okay, that's a planned operation. Or if he, will stay and keep on hanging to the power, the situation is getting out of control. The ground is, is shaking under his feet, and he will lose control over the country, and that's going to happen soon. So that was my first prediction. The second prediction was the economy. I thought that the economy would be in much worse shape than it is right now. I understand what happened, why I turned out to be wrong. Russia managed to circumvent some sanctions and receive extra income from exporting oil, and it also used the situation that is happening in Israel and Palestine to its own advantage. Perhaps it even took some kind of part of instigating it. I don't know, but it's awfully suspicious what happened. It really benefited Russia. But it didn't change anything fundamentally for the economy. It prolonged the situation. So I think that even worse collapse than I previously expected is going to be happening in 2024. I also was wrong on a few things, such as I thought that YouTube was going to be banned in Russia, blocked. It's not. It's on the way to be blocked, and there are rumors it will be blocked at the end of 24. As long as they figure out how they can technically do that, they will do that. And, they already have an alternative to YouTube, which is called VK. It's a Russian platform, Russian website filled with Russian media. Okay, they've been busy creating videos so for people to entertain. So now they can easily switch from YouTube to VK. But it's not so easy technically to block YouTube. Things like that. I was right on quite a few things. I predicted Prigozhin's mutiny and the rise of private armies and things like that, And for the 2024, there are two major predictions. They're general. First is economy is going to be declining. No matter what Putin says, no matter what Russian officials say, no matter what even some economists say, Russian economy is on the decline, on a very steep and a very long decline. That's going to last for years, perhaps decades. And I think that date to watch, the month to watch is April. We will start seeing real big changes in April, and the changes will come with exchange rate devaluing of Russian ruble. I expect the devaluation to start in April, perhaps even in late March. The prices for everything will be going up. It's going to be absolutely crazy. There will be shortages, not because Russian farmers don't grow much, but there'll be shortages of cheap stuff. Okay, and then people that we will definitely see food lines, many more of them in Russia. I also expect the West taking much firmer, tougher steps to monitor sanctions, how sanctions are being carried out, and catching companies that are helping Russia to circumvent sanctions and punishing them. And that's going to be lessons to others. And I think Russia will have more and more troubles to export oil and natural gas. Obviously, you need pipelines for that. So, and I still think that Vladimir Putin is going to be on the way out, one way or another. I don't know how. That's what I think is going to happen. Is the general thing's going to happen in 2024, the trends.
I think that's entirely plausible. I also think that the overly pessimistic media that we've seen in the West in 2023 about Ukraine and its achievements, I think it will be proven wrong, as in the strike on the Novocherkassk and some very underreported strikes that happened recently, but the Baikal Amur tunnel being sort of bombed. I don't know if that's in use yet. Also, a space communication center in Crimea was hit. There are some extraordinary things taking place, some of which don't get much coverage in the Western media. I would predict myself that there's going to be an increase in the fairly high-profile strikes that are going to be happening there. I think Britain, they've already announced they'll be supplying more air defense missiles in the wake of the major attack yesterday. I think behind the scenes, we'll see more Storm Shadows and more capability delivered to Ukraine, which is going to give them incredible capabilities. My prediction as well is that as Putin's struggle to win on the battlefield fails, he will once more turn to information warfare. And I think we are going to see an intensity of information and propaganda warfare in the West, the like of which we have not seen yet. In fact, we already see the early signs of assets, agents within academia, the media, useful idiots. We see them being activated all over the place. And we see some shockingly bad narratives appearing, especially in the US media, but in the media all over Europe, the US, and the West. And you could call me a conspiracy theorist, but behind a lot of it, I see, the Kremlin really spreading its narratives and trying to amplify its narratives to weaken support for Ukraine. I don't think that will be, in the end, effective. At least I hope not.
Jonathan, one more thing I would like to add for 2024. The very general thing to watch in Russia is Mercury rising. Russia will become more and more feverish. Things like perhaps local protests, things like food lines in different provinces, things like shortages of things like students perhaps protesting, will be breaking out in different times and in different. Russia is a large country and in different provinces and different territories, and then you will be getting feeling that Russia is feverish and the fever is rising. Okay, and I think that will be the biggest trend for 2024.
And if any decision makers are listening to this, that is not the point to ease up on support for Ukraine. It's the point to double down and push to make that fever rise, because only by that fever breaking, I think, is there going to be change, both within Russia and of course a chance of the war ending. And this war is killing Ukrainians. It's also killing a vast number of Russians. So yeah, if we can end this war, if we can even force the collapse of Putin's regime, we'll not only be saving Ukrainian lives, we'll actually be saving Russian lives as well, is my belief. Konstantin, it's been a huge pleasure, as always, speaking to you, even though the topics are incredibly dark. It's been a huge privilege throughout the year to be able to have these conversations. I do very much look forward to continuing them into the new year and helping to, inform and keep people engaged with this incredibly important subject.
Jonathan, thank you so much for having me. I like your channel very much. I watch interviews. I learn many interesting things from your interviews, and I wish everyone who comes here and talks to you good luck in 2024. I wish all the viewers good luck and you all the best too, and I hope that we continue in the next year.